What's happening, guys? Thanks for tuning in to this next edition of the Sunday Scaries segment on the podcast. This segment is entirely dedicated to engaging with our community. It's a way for listeners and viewers like you to come onto the podcast and ask us questions or ask any previous guests that have had on, because sometimes they do pop into these discussion groups. These discussion groups operate a lot like a Twitter Spaces or a Clubhouse discussion room. So it's very open floor, formatted style. You don't need to be a crypto expert by any means to come in and talk. And there's a number of avenues to communicate with us while we're recording. So if you don't want to show up on video and want to do audio only, that's totally fine. There's also a chat function if you don't even want us to either see video or audio. So there's a lot of avenues, and I encourage anybody and anyone to come on because it's a great way to answer some questions that you might want answered that we haven't asked. We record these every Saturday at 10:30 Eastern time, and you can find links to enter the Zoom room on my Twitter and the podcast Twitter. You can find me at Allen, ALLEN Hodl, HODL on Twitter, and you can follow the podcast Twitter on COB Podcast. That is COB Podcast. And just as a friendly reminder, we may seem like financial experts, but ultimately we are not. So anything we say is not financial advice. All our discussions are purely for entertainment and educational purposes only. So I appreciate y'all tuning in. And I hope to meet some of you guys here in the future on some future Sunday Scaries recordings. So take care.
So you're gonna dox me on saying this guy's name?
I don't know. We can edit it out here.
Hell
What's
no,
going on?
man.
What's going on, Bill?
Oh, what's up, Bill?
See
Shawn?
how wait for some people to hop in here. Sean's in here. Got
I'll
Jacob
send you.
in here.
I'll message you, Alan.
For sure. I'm gonna run and grab some coffee here real quick, so I'll be right back because I just got out of bed.
No problem. Bill, what's going on, man?
Not much. What time zone are you guys?
Oh, I'm Eastern, and he's Central. What about yourself?
Eastern, Connecticut.
Oh, I'm in New York City.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're right there. What part of Connecticut are you?
Norwalk. So.
Oh, that's kind of close.
Half an hour, 45 minutes away.
Yeah, that's not bad. Do you come to the city often or no?
No, haven't been down in a while.
Oh wow, it's getting back to what it used to be.
Yeah. I had a brother who was down by the Flatiron. He got out, as the COVID stuff started to come rolling down.
He moved out of the city? Oh wow.
Yeah, his office is in southern Connecticut in Stamford. Yeah, he said he went back and it was like totally trashed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, when I got back, I left for COVID as well. I went to North Carolina for a little while, and then when I got back in September of last year, it was wild. Like it was like you'd go downtown, it was desolate. It was like apocalyptic almost. Yeah, but now it's starting to ramp back up. It's pretty awesome.
That's good.
Yeah, but I'm surprised you didn't go to the Pomp Pizza thing. There was a few of us there.
I wanted to. Literally, my youngest sister was getting married that day.
Oh wow!
I was like, could I sneak down for a couple hours? No.
Is your sister and your brother? Have you converted them to the Bitcoin?
Bitcoin. I've converted a few. I'm the oldest of a big family, but I've converted a few. Yeah.
Yeah. I was listening to a video with Michael Saylor today, and he was giving the statistics on I guess he had taken a poll on his Twitter of how many percentage of people are trying to onboard their friends and stuff, and it's and then how many, he said 51% of Bitcoiners own their portfolio is more than leveraged at 51% into Bitcoin. They're 90% or so, and there's all these pretty cool things. I was yeah.
Well, it's self-propagating. You think about it. The more people you get on board, the bigger the pie grows.
Of course. Yeah, I think Cameron Winklevoss or one of them said at the thing is 2% or 1% of all businesses even keep it on their balance sheet. So it's so where are we really going? Are we going down to 0 or are we going closer to 10? And it's if you just do the basic math, it's just adoption can only truly grow. It can't really.
Yeah, but it's so easy to second guess yourself. I owned boatloads of Bitcoin back in 2012. Literally you can still mine it on your CPU.
Yeah, how did you get it? How did that happen?
Just kind of intellectual curiosity. I've been a computer geek forever, and you see this, and you're like, okay, that's really interesting. And then, I can kind of make money on my computer, and about half of it would get stolen as you're trying to, use it for gift cards here or there. And then I look back, and between that and freaking Dogecoin, I probably had about $40 million worth.
Oh wow!
If I get through. So that stings a little.
Hindsight's 2020,
yeah. 2017 took a rise up and down. I kind of shitcoined in 2017 pretty hard because there were all these neat applications and a lot of hype, and that deflated. It kept a little bit, but this time, as you can see, like joining the Pomp course, a lot more focused, a lot more knowledge based rather than listening to noise.
I'm so glad I joined the course. I wasn't really. I thought I was really well versed in all Bitcoin and all these altcoins and stuff, and then going through the course, it's turned me into a hardcore Bitcoin maxi.
Yeah.
So
Cody's no joke. Pomp's no joke.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, if he's a fraud, if Pomp was a fraud, he's been playing a great game for the last few years. So I by no means think I know some people, especially in the Bitcoin community, kind of nag on him for having all these sponsors and making money off his podcast and stuff. But I think it's the most ethical way to make money off of Bitcoin, and he's not getting money. He's not getting paid in Bitcoin. He's getting paid in dollars, and he's spreading the word. He's letting people know, hey, this is what Bitcoin does. This is why it has utility. He's not telling you explicitly to go, hey, throw your entire life savings into it. Although I think a lot of Bitcoiners would say do that.
Yeah, no, he's a great advocate. Some of the companies, we're still filtering out, in the whole atmosphere. Some of the companies are in it for a quick buck, and some of the big ones still.
Is that I know you've been doing on the job hunt, right?
Yeah.
Have you found that to be with some of these companies you've been talking with?
No. That's just sort of general research. You see some of them have been on the wrong. I won't, name out any. You're educated in this, but some of them have been on the wrong side of politics in Bitcoin from the start, and kind of continue to be.
That's the beauty of Bitcoin, though. Is the ones that go on the wrong side, they end up losing.
Just because it's still doing pretty well, but yeah.
Give it some time, I'm telling you.
Well, I think it's a healthy attitude that we have, go to first principles, no BS. I outside from it, crushing my net worth, the Elon and ESG FUD, I'm like, yes, bring it on. We've got a great case, and let's firm it up rather than get sloppy here. It's a workout for Bitcoin.
I was listening to Kathy Wood speak about the ESG and all of the FUD, Elon Musk type things. She believes that eventually this will start to translate into having solar energy conversations where the access of the Bitcoin miner in your home can burn off into solar power, and it can kind of ramp those type of things going forward. I kind of believe in that as well. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, totally. It builds infrastructure and incentivizes infrastructure. So one of the arguments was that, Bitcoin makes X dollars per, kilowatt. And, you can use the centralized power, build up grids, et cetera. And then, you have a crisis. You have a heat wave or a cold wave. And then you can just roll it into, where it's vital. If people are willing to pay 50 cents a kilowatt, the power goes there. And it can, because the infrastructure is in place.
How do you have a energy background? Because I'm fascinated by all this stuff, but I don't understand what a kilowatt or a mega. I have no idea what you're saying, but I think it sounds really great.
Yeah, numbers for how much energy, and largely irrelevant. X.
Yeah. Oh.
Mark just joined us here. Mark, we actually had just interviewed Mark. Moist had met him down in Miami, and Mark's very well versed in all things Bitcoin. Jacob, do you mind asking Mark? I don't know if Mark caught the question when he hopped in here.
So Mark, how you doing, man?
I'm great, Jacob. How you guys doing this morning?
Doing pretty good. Thanks
I like the background.
Yeah, man. I'm getting used to this. I'm getting used to the Zoom thing now. Only a couple years behind, but starting to figure some things out.
Look,
For
it's good.
sure.
So we're just talking about, well, Bill was talking about, you know, understanding the, you know, principles of Bitcoin and kind of where we're headed. With the FUD and everything that's going on with Elon, it's kind of nice for us that the price is being driven down because we can accumulate more. And then I asked the question about, Kathy Woods said in our most recent video, or a recent video, was like, she believes that we're in the future, we're going to all have like a Bitcoin miner in our home, just kind of like a little box or something, you know, for conversation's sake. And then all of the access mining energy from our Bitcoin miner will produce, go to like a solar panel. And then it's going to increase. All of this conversation is just going to get warped into a positive for green energy and solar. I'm just kind of seeing what you guys thought about that.
No, I generally agree with what you're saying. I've thought about that a lot. I mean, my take on the whole Elon thing is that for whatever reasons that he, you know, made the comments he did, you know, people are talking a lot about the credits that, you know, he receives, that he just got some political pressure to do so. But I think if you think about things a few steps down the road, he's gonna come out with some of the solutions to the green energy ordeal. And I think if you tie what Kathy Wood says in there as well, then, you know, Tesla's going to have a lot of these solutions, right? With their solar roofing and just the technology and what they focus on to. I think we're definitely headed down that road. You know, whether it's 5-10 years down the road or sooner, who knows? I think what you're saying, it generally makes sense, and it's a good way to think about it.
Are you guys aware of some of the nuts and bolts on Tesla? So first of all, you have, you know, the energy production, containment, smart grid, you know, literally like a mesh net for communications. And I'm not sure that this is kind of a double-edged sword here on the cars. So, you know, back in the day when I used to mine Litecoin, you know, I built some rigs and like milk cartons and all that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had one card that could do 10 teraflops, 10 trillion calculations per second. It was badass. The Tesla CPUs, or they're largely like a GPU, you know, graphical processor for seeing the road and analyzing it all. But those do 144 teraflops each, 144 trillion calculations per second sitting in your car.
Insane.
So that sitting offline is a great altcoin miner. Whether it can be used for Bitcoin or not, I'm not entirely sure. And that's even before you get to his central computer, which he's got this big brain called Dojo. That's an exaflop computer. Very few countries have anything like that.
Bill, it's good to meet you, man. Are you currently mining any, whether it's Bitcoin or any altcoins at the moment?
Nope. I guess the closest thing I've got is some Bitcoin on Thorchain.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious if any of you guys have looked into Compass Mining, who's, you know, trying to take a position to democratize, you know, Bitcoin mining to the masses, and maybe what your thoughts on that is moving forward. I think what Jacob said is interesting to think about it. I think that you know, from an individual or residential standpoint, we're going to be able to access, you know, Bitcoin mining from our home in a more efficient manner moving forward. But I think right now the closest thing I've encountered to it is this company called Compass Mining, and is offering you know, you the access to be able to purchase miners and then have them hosted at their facilities, and you can get up and going pretty quickly.
Pretty cool.
Is this it right here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
that's
Compass
the side
mining?
down.
There were a
Gotcha.
lot of mining pools early on with the altcoins, and a lot of them were, some of them were legit, some of them were pretty shady. There definitely is a market for this as it matures. I don't know if you guys, like Alan, were in on it, but in the pomp course, we had one guy get on. It was the only time I heard him speak, but we went off for 45 minutes. He does nuclear policy for the US. And we went on this long tangent, and he was talking about how nuclear facilities, they basically have free power, you know, localized. They've got a huge footprint, better security than most countries. And, you know, we could kind of make it domestic policy to bring miners here, and it would be almost zero cost.
Yeah, that I was so intrigued by that conversation, and I'm surprised he like came on. I think it was like the first week, and then I never heard anything next from him, and I forgot to write his name down. I was like, who is this guy?
It was Eric. I'm sure you can find him. I did send a message to him. I don't think I heard anything back. He might have just popped in, but I was like, yes, yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's such a, I think nuclear is fine it's dealt with this horrible problem of just the name associated with nuclear, and like with accidents like the Fukushima incident, accidents like in Chernobyl, like the FUD created around them. Like a lot of people don't realize like those, like the reason why those nuclear reactors failed is just they were old, outdated, weren't kept up to code properly. And so like we've shied away, and I'm sure like big coal mining and all that definitely doesn't want nuclear to come into the mix, into the fold. But I feel like from a Bitcoiner's perspective, it's really going to push nuclear up into the limelight. Now, there's all talks of like geothermal mining and everything, but there's no like active volcanoes here in the US, at least that I'm aware of. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think there is.
There's a huge one under Yellowstone Park, but it's down low, but it's lifting like the whole plate.
Yeah, that's super. Okay, I guess you could get some geothermal action from that. But either way, I think places like Texas that are creating a lot. What's going on, Dustin? Um, Mark, I'm gonna mute you just for a second, just because I can hear your kids.
Okay, sorry about that.
No,
Yeah.
you're all good. But I think places like Texas and Wyoming that really don't have any geothermal activity, they're gonna incentivize their, and especially Texas that has like its entire own energy grid. They're gonna, I don't know if it's going to be in the form of credits or what, but I think nuclear energy is going to be the hot buzz here over the next decade, and mining.
Yeah, no, a point that we've touched on in many of these conversations, but you really got to come back to is that Bitcoin allows you to use localized power. Transmission of power, you lose about 60% in the cities. So it opens up all kinds of avenues.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. And not only that, but I mean, so here's one thing I'm not too, here's where one part of the conversation I usually don't understand is I've heard this talk about how it incentivizes energy companies to make the cheapest energy. But when I hear that, I'm like, okay, when you make cheaper energy, like what are you sacrificing in terms of environmental impact? And if you're making cheaper energy, like miners, I mean, like essentially like the bigger mining operation you have, the more energy you need to make, and the person who's making the most energy is going to be rewarded with the best block size. So I don't know how those two like can coexist with one another.
Well, the cheapest energy is the free energy, kind of by definition. So
I gotcha. Okay.
passive energy, even coal mining, you got to dig it out, even if the coal's, cheaper than oil or such. But, flare gas is there, it's free. You have to do almost nothing. You just connect to it. Same thing with hydro, and almost the same thing with nuclear. If you have these things, you've already gone through all the huge headaches and startup costs, at least in theory, on having these plants up. Then you just park miners next to it and draw off of the power that you're trying to find a market for to repay your investment. So even with the nuclear, it's almost passive, almost just taking energy that's just kind of being made and going to waste.
Do you think it's bad then? Because like essentially when this, it's not that if this movement happens, it's when. Because to me, from like an economic standpoint, it's a no-brainer. And as soon as these energy companies figure out how to do it, they're going to do it. But we already know with mining as it is right now, it's impossible for the little guy to get in. Yeah, you can buy an ASIC miner, you can join a mining pool. Do you think that's bad that the mining's inherently centralized? I know as far as like a decentralized protocol with all the node operations, it's not a big deal. But for some of these people that aren't really well versed in the world of Bitcoin, they say that's one of like the first arguments they always throw up is like, oh, no, all the mining centralized, or all the mining powers in China.
Yeah, China's kind of problematic. I mean, I think it's interesting that you get the ESG FUD, but then you have China hoarding coal because they can bring it into cities and pushing Bitcoin to hydroelectric. It's like right on. And for it to decentralize out to like Kazakhstan and things like that, good step. And for a lot of these companies to come to the U.S., good step. I'm not sure I'd want it all in the U.S. Do you trust this government? When it comes down to it.
No.
Shouldn't trust any of them. So scattering it around is great. Yeah, it's always going to be hard for a little guy to do anything meaningful, but there's some interesting trends there. You know, there's a global chip shortage. So there's some companies here in Connecticut that are basically creating like the infrastructure for new chip plants. And so a lot of things are going to go up in different areas. There's going to be some new contenders.
We desperately need new chip plants here in the US. I don't know if you've been following all the China and Taiwan stuff going on, but the biggest chip manufacturers in Taiwan, and just seeing how China's ramping up, like practicing beach landings and all the threats they're throwing at Taiwan. And we see like in the automobile industry, they can't even get cars off the lot because they're missing their needed chips and everything. It's like the US is in a huge conundrum right now.
We've sacrificed some national security and infrastructure because China does it cheaper. And, you know, we've been kind of sold down the river. And I think people are waking up to it. The corporations need to do a 180, though.
For sure. Hey, Dustin just entered the room. I saw Kennedy, but I think he left. Maybe he'll come back. Dustin, how's it going, man?
It's going good. Good to jump in. Good to hear from you guys. Good to see everybody again. It's been a few weeks now.
I know it's been crazy. I've been seeing the fourth cohort kind of get all excited and everything, and I've been feeling some FOMO. Seems like they're a little bit better at asking questions than we were.
They've got an example from us, I guess. So yeah, it's good.
I love seeing the energy.
Yeah,
that
one thing that I think was interesting. Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that's always kind of interesting when you think about like how Bitcoin fixes this is when you consider how the U.S. lost some of its manufacturing capacity, and if you kind of think about it, it really does come down to the money issue again. And when our money and inflation occurs here, it sort of leads to moving manufacturing jobs to places where it's cheaper to do that, which obviously led to Taiwan and China getting a lot of the capacity for chip manufacturing and stuff like that. So, you kind of think about this as a broader picture. Really, the decentralization issue is important, and that falls even to manufacturing. So if you can get the chips spread around the world, that'll be better for everybody. Just like Bitcoin mining, I think that'll be good to watch. Hopefully that happens. Although I'm afraid that the U.S. government is going to subsidize the chip manufacturers in the United States in a way that continues to distort our economy. But I think it'll be good for that particular industry to see that, outside of just Southeast Asia or just China and Taiwan.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. I know in some of our unreleased podcasts, we've been kind of going heavy into the content creation side. And one of the topics I've continuously brought up, and I've tweeted it out a couple times, was just seeing the natural progression of like a first world economy. And we've seen our economy transition from manufacturing to service. And now with the dawn of AI, service is going out the door and we're going more into like a creator type economy. But I've heard this argument that like this is the natural cycle of things. And the next step from creators actually bringing back in manufacturing jobs. And you've kind of touched on the same thing again there, Dustin, how like they're thinking things are going to come back into the US. Bill, you said it too as well. And I think the more I've thought about this too, I've had a couple of people reply on a tweet thread I had too, kind of saying the same thing. And it made me think that like, okay, if we are bringing in back manufacturing jobs, like we're going to see obviously the cost of manufacturing and the cost of goods, because there's no way that anyone in the US is going to stand for the wages that are paid out over in Asia. I mean, that's borderline slavery, and we can't maintain a middle class here on those kind of wages. It's not doable. So that means the price of goods of manufacturing and everything is going to go up. And to justify those goods going up, what's going to have to happen is these products are going to have to be optimized for longevity. Like right now, everything's created planned obsolescence. A new iPhone comes out every year. I think the power tool industry is kind of one of the areas that hasn't been affected. Like I can still go out and buy a DeWalt drill and know it's going to work for at least 5-10 years.
I disagree on that. The Home Depot rebranding, you get a DeWalt drill, it lasts a week,
Really? I haven't, my DeWalt's lasted me a decent amount of time. I bought one like 2-3 years ago. So I need to, maybe I should start setting some money aside.
Well, if you bought it somewhere else, but they actually sell their names like John Deere. You go and you try and get parts for a Home Depot one. It's not a John Deere.
Really? Wow. That's interesting. I didn't know that. So that further goes into my point, though, you know, is like
Absolutely.
everything's being geared towards planned obsolescence. And if we do see an issue, I mean, essentially, I think what's going to need to happen is, and I think we're trending in that direction just with COVID. We're realizing like areas of our livelihoods that are just exposed tremendously to our biggest competitor out there. I mean, without them, we wouldn't be able to survive with all the goods and services that they provide to us, unfortunately. Um, but if we do bring things back, it's going to be some short-term pain. But if anything, Bitcoin has taught me is like, doesn't matter about the short term. Everything's optimized for long term. And when we come back and bring in some better built products that last for a longer time, I think it brings in both from like a material standpoint, fantastic, but also just from a philosophical standpoint, our whole this, especially this newest generation of like Zoomers, myself included as like a millennial, like we're all so geared for instant gratification all the time, all the time. And fiat is like the biggest proponent of that. You know, it's like, hey, look at your depreciating dollars. Let's spend it, get a loan, go buy, go. I mean, that's part and due to capitalism. But I think Bitcoin's taught me, and I think Mark was the one who brought this up a couple days ago. But he was just like, yeah, like Bitcoin's totally taught me to think like, hey, like I don't need that new shirt. I don't need that new car. Like I just want to put my money away into Bitcoin. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I definitely feel that way.
I totally love the philosophy and I agree with it. And you tipping down the philosophy slope here because it goes deep. But you think about it, if we get rid of planned obsolescence, how green is that? If we start making
Incredibly.
quality things, you actually start to cut into the wealth divide. If we have things that last, you're fighting back against that constant inflation that strips people of their wealth. And in probably too far to go, but even talking about just this debt jubilee we're kind of going into in the U.S. with the inflation spiral, it helps to land that plane too.
Mark, Dustin, you guys can
Yeah,
hop
no,
in
I
at
mean,
any time.
look, yeah, no, what you're saying is all on point. I mean, savers, if you're saving cash in a savings account, you're losing, right? I mean, we live in a consumer driven economy that if you hold on to those dollars, they're going to buy you less from a purchasing from a purchasing power standpoint further down the road. So you got to do one of two things with them, right? You either need to go buy stuff with them and spend them, or invest them, and invest that money to try to outrun the debasement of inflation. So yeah, I mean, just going back to kind of your comment, Bitcoin is reward savers, right? Because we don't have instant gratification. We learn to delay gratification with Bitcoin, knowing that due to scarcity, that the Bitcoin is going to appreciate in value as adoption continues to grow, and it being the only scarce, verifiably scarce asset that we have in humanity. So yeah, we say it a lot. Bitcoin fixes this, and Bitcoin changes you to some degrees, but it's all in a positive manner. I mean, what it's done, at least for me personally, to be able to better understand what to do with these dollars that I take in from a salary or your job each day, and where to put them so that we can I can provide a better life for my family down the road and moving forward in the future. I think that's what we all want to be able to do to some degree.
Yeah, one thing I think that's a great point. I think the inflation component of this is pretty interesting. One thing that somebody just said that reminded me of a story about sort of workers and buying work boots. And if you don't have enough money to buy a nice pair of work boots that cost like $300, you're going to end up paying, $80 for a new pair every year. And after 4 years, you've already lost money just on your shoe purchases. And I think to your point, when you kind of look at time preference and Bitcoin kind of encouraging people to think more long term, it really does have a green impact in that, rather than having 4 pairs of shoes that end up in the trash can, you only have one that lasts a little bit longer. And so I think you're right, it's going to end up being a little more painful, because those high quality shoes cost more, but in the long term, you're saving money by having a product that lasts, substantially longer. So, I don't know. I think assuming that Bitcoin leads to that is an interesting way to look at it. I think there's some positive arguments when you come off the fiat standard, but again, it'll take a little time and be painful in the short term. But yeah, I think that's a great argument, and hopefully it's one that we can effectively make at some point.
Yeah, I totally agree too. Dustin, to your point about buying the quality, it reminds me of the book The Millionaire Next Door. They're like, go out, buy that Oriental rug. It'll last you your life and you enjoy it, rather than the crap rug that you replace every 2 years. So a lot of this is healthy.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and it's like, again, it just goes back to how, and I really haven't I came to this conclusion like a week ago, just like how the dollar system right now really incentivizes short-term thinking. And the reason why I believe, it's cliche, I know it's cliche to say Bitcoin fixes this, but people have this perception of how money works. Our educational system here in the US doesn't teach you anything about money or finance. And I think it's for a nefarious reason too, because if they did, kids are smart, kids like asking questions, they would be like, wait a second, like, why would I put myself in debt to go to school, and become a slave? Like, why would I pay taxes? You mean my dollar's going where, but Bitcoin, on the other hand, it's gonna be like, wait, so if I hold on to this coin for 10 years, I can buy this much more and spend this much less. Like, it's inevitable. It's a no-brainer.
Personally, for me, I just started investing in Bitcoin in like January, and for me, I'm going down. So I'm a little bit in the shitter. And it kind of sucks, but I keep telling myself, just stay strong. I think I saw a post by Will Clemente was saying that even the most bullish of bulls are starting to turn a little bearish. I'm gonna keep holding, but I do consider. I guess yesterday, to be honest, was my first day that I thought, are we going through the bear market soon? It's kind of funny, when you think about the price and all the other things. It's like Bill was saying earlier, I'm thrilled that the price is in the 30s because I can still accumulate for a cheaper price. But part of me is a little sad that it's, going down, to be honest.
Well, I'm terrified too. You watch your net worth drop in it, but you think about it, and another sort of healthy cycle in this is the fear makes us learn more. We're like, okay, am I just smoking myself? Let me look at this. Let me really drill down, and I think that's good too.
I tend to go to which is kind of why I keep prefacing these videos, but when it's going down in price, I go to go to YouTube and start watching some videos, like a warm blanket over me and Michael Saylor hold me kind of thing.
Jacob, let me offer you some comfort. So here's Bitcoin. Let's go through some annual returns real quick. 1 year return, it's up 284%. 2 years, it's up 267%. 3 years, 437%. 5 years, 4,713%. So just to put some things into perspective, yes, it does. We did have this great run up to $64,000 and a pullback, and that's the general sentiment right now. Is everyone's like, oh, Bitcoin's down 50%, but yes, it does depend on when you started your position or when you started dollar cost averaging, and you got in on January, so you are kind of on that other side where you're experiencing the drawdown. But look, no one that's held, I think it's longer than at least a 4-year halving cycle. I think it's even shorter than that. Has ever lost money or has ever been in the red with regards to a Bitcoin ROI. So, I just continue to tell people, it's like, look, getting the best day to always buy Bitcoin is today. So you're averaging in, and you got to plan on holding this, for at least 4 years at a minimum. But the longer you can hold it, as we continue to talk about, the greater the returns are. And I don't see these returns. I'd love to welcome any of y'all's thoughts and opinions on this. I just read off some pretty big numbers that we're averaging, over 200. I mean, we know that averages over 200% per year compound annual growth rate. I don't think that's slowing down anytime soon. I know as the numbers get bigger that we're probably going to, start trending down towards it averaging maybe 150, 100 and so on. But just where we're at in the adoption cycle, I mean, there was so much bullish news that came out this week. I mean, Portugal granting the first crypto exchange operating licenses. We had Spain's second largest bank, BBVA, is offering crypto products to I think it was to Switzerland. Novogratz signed that deal with Galaxy and Goldman Sachs, starting to offer. Goldman Sachs is starting to trade crypto futures. I mean, this is just, we talk about adoption. It's happening so fast on an exponential level. And so I don't see those numbers going down. I mean, I can't wait till we're talking, a year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. I think you're going to be doing cartwheels over there, Jacob, and you're extremely still early.
Yeah, I do think that. And something kind of funny, I think it was Pomp was saying it, but like how like each halving cycle kind of creates your graduating class, you know what I mean? So like I'm the class of 21, and so I'm looking forward to getting to 2025 and 2030. And another point that you made, it's like, yeah, right now it's not ideal, right? Of course, I mean it's fine, but for my situation, whatever. But at the same time, it gets an ROI of 200%. So how like ignorant are blind are you to thinking that you could do better than that? So it's like, okay, Bitcoin's not the answer, then what is the answer? Where do you want to put your money that could do that well? And then it's also just like you were saying, with the monetary, like the halving cycle already planned, it just feels like it's the only option with how inflated the stock market is, how inflated real estate is. I couldn't get real estate probably. There's just not too many options left, and it kind of just feels like it's the only asset that I comfortably can hold.
Yeah, I mean, Bill just made a comment about it that I agree with completely. It's it comes back to the question: how much do you trust the U.S. government and the Fed? If you're investing or putting a lot of your wealth into U.S. dollar denominated assets, then that's kind of a question you definitely got to ask: is how much you trust them.
It's funny. I try not to be nihilistic or like think apocalyptic in that sense, because I do want to continue to have my belief in America. I don't want to continue to think that things are just going to go south, even though it's trending in that way. I get that, but it's just more having to do with the stock market's been around since the 60s or 70s, and then it created the 401ks and everything to incentivize people to put their money in that, and it's been inflated, so now we're screwed. So it's just crypto's our version of that. I believe Bitcoin's the only thing, I'm not so close to Alan as a maxi. I do think there is some use cases for other things, even though they are controlled by other situations or whatever with proof of stake, proof of work. But my point is just I don't know. I still want to keep my faith in America somewhat. I do. I don't like continuing to think everything's so bad, even though it
might make you feel a little bit better, Jacob.
Hey, Shawn. Nice to hear from you.
Sorry, guys. It's kind of hard for me to like pull my Google Maps down and unmute, pull the phone up, and it's a little bit of a bitch. But Jacob, on the current downtrend, it's really basic technical analysis right now, and it's actually very healthy. Like everything you're seeing right now is really good for Bitcoin, and it's really hard to understand that whenever you see your net worth, as Bill said, going down. So basically, when the first run up happened, there was not a long period of time between 30K and 40K. Like it did not sit there very long. It skyrocketed past 40K. 40K went there and gone, I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and we're 50K, and then a massive run up to 60K. And in all of that, you did not have a consolidation phase whatsoever. And consolidation is simply whenever you have a large run up, you take a small pullback, and the market says, hey, we agree on this price, and we're okay with saying that this asset is worth this much. And then after that pullback, it starts to have its second run up again. Well, Bitcoin skipped all that shit. It went from 30K to 40K to 50K to 60K because everybody was going hog wild with the crypto rush, and it got pumped up way too quick, and it was super, super unhealthy. So the big like the discerning factor was whenever we had that rather decent crypto crash a couple weeks back, and you saw a very, very hard bounce off of 29K. Like we barely dipped below 30K, and Bitcoin said a hard fuck no, and it ripped back up above 30K. And you've consistently traded between 30 to 40K, sticking between 35 and 38 for quite some time. That's called consolidation. That's the market saying no. As of right now, based off of everything we know, this asset is 100% worth at least this amount of money. So it's basically getting ready for a springboard. That way it's ready for its next run-up phase. And hopefully the next run-up phase will be done smarter, and everyone won't try and pump up the price again, and they'll realize that these market trends do need to go in a more consistent fashion. So feel good about it. What you see right now is consolidation. It might go down a little bit more, but that's just time to dip, because the consolidation I don't see going below 25 to 28K, and realistically I'd be surprised if it actually goes that low again.
Yeah, good
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sean. I mean, I at the 300. Oh, sorry, Bill. I was just going to say real quick to Sean's was a great breakdown. The 365-day moving average is at 28,937, so right around 29,000. Until that level is really broken down with I'd say like really strong conviction, then then everything that Sean just said is in play, and I think we're going to springboard much higher after that. I'd really like to see us get above that 200-day, which is right around 43,000. And does that, I think there's going to be some strong to the upside, and just from everything's healthy on the on-chain analytics, on the data that comes from on-chain, everything. I mean, we put out yesterday, just there's a lot of there's still a lot of new entrants coming into the space, and the strong hands still continuing to accumulate at a almost record level. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting 21, and I think 2022, but I think we got a room to run throughout the rest.
Yeah, I totally agree. The on-chains are all good short term. I don't know if you guys follow like, Real Vision or GMI. Some of their charts go out a little bit further, and you look at the behavioral patterns on the exponentials, and it's just like, okay, we've got a couple months, and then it rips if it does the same thing. We've cleared a lot of FUD, and all the fundamentals are just getting stronger, and you can't make more of it. So I think the story's intact. One thing, Jacob, I'm a huge fan of like crypto IRAs. I think that's a business that, outside of just being a business with a huge future, it's also a nice thing to have. You park money there where you're just like, yep, I'm following the storyline, but it's not how much did I make or lose this week. It helps you broaden your scale to like the 10, 20-year perspective.
Yeah, because I'm not really, I know it sounds silly, I'm not so concerned with making money. I know it sounds so, I'm more concerned with losing money. Like, I just don't want to lose it. I want to be able to put it somewhere and feel good. And I do with, like I said, I do with Bitcoin. So that's kind of why I choose that, for a ton of reasons. But one of those, like, I think we just had Morgan on, and Morgan does a DeFi thing where it's like a basket of them, and he puts it in. And I always thought that was kind of interesting, something like that as well. But because I do believe, like, I it's funny, it's like now that I'm kind of with learning stuff, you process it, then you forget it, and then it's kind of coming back to you. And it's kind of, I'm in that cycle of my crypto experience where I'm actually coming back around on, I wouldn't say altcoins or anything, but I'm just into I'm into other projects as well. I don't think I would invest in them personally, but I find the use case for all of them, and being able to get into a basket of them would be something I think is pretty cool.
One thing I wanted to address real quick before we go into like the DeFi conversation. So I came in 2017. I made my first buy like beginning of the year 2017, and I held all the way through the bear market, but I didn't buy any because I was like, this thing might go to zero. I didn't really like. I'm glad I didn't sell, but I didn't take advantage of all the buys, and like seeing all these pullbacks. Like now, every time a pullback happens, rather than be scared, I'm like, oh, I'm losing value, I'm losing money. I'm like, I need to buy more. So I bought some more last night. I'm hoping we see somewhere in the 20s again. That's just me. But I had this chart pulled up here. Let me share it real quick. And this might not be the best one. Let's see here. It was this one right here. But what it's illustrating is like the decrease in volatility over the years as adoption increases. So every time we have this dip, it's like, when's the last time we're going to see this? You know, the masses have never had a programmable money that's designed to increase in value, you know, and eventually we're going to hit this event horizon where like this mania of buy-in is going to occur, and then like price is going to stabilize out, and the only thing that's going to increase the value and price is going to be the population increasing in size, because the bigger population you have, the more divisible Bitcoin becomes. And at that point, this is assuming we're on a Bitcoin standard, things aren't going to be denominated in dollars anymore. So like Bitcoin's going to have to be subdivisible, divisible infinitely, which it is, which is good. That can change. But that'll be the way it increases in value from there on out, you know? So like for me now, having been through like an entire bull market and my first halving, like I've gone from viewing my portfolio going down to viewing my portfolio like, okay, how much Bitcoin is in there? Like let's increase the Satoshi stack. Let's increase my Bitcoin stack. Like I don't need these dollars all going into Bitcoin. That's, I mean, me being a Bitcoin maxi is how I view it. But to touch on the altcoin thing here real quick. So like, obviously
Can I jump in there before I jump to altcoin?
Yeah, for sure, Dustin.
I always think it's kind of useful to look at other people that are outside of the Bitcoin space and think about how they think about things. And one that always comes to mind for me is Warren Buffett. And he always talks about how when others are scared, you should be greedy. When others are greedy, you should be scared. And I think if you understand why you're into Bitcoin, it's a perfect time to buy it when it's going down, because, you know, I think if you're long-term, you know, like you, Alan, kind of a maxi and believe in it broader than just for making money, then you should jump in when it's cheaper. And, you know, that's kind of the place I'm at. It sounds like you're at. And so when it does go down in price, I'm like, this is great. It's a discount. It's a, you know, bargain prices for Bitcoin. Everybody should buy it. And, you know, as much as it kind of is scary to see your fiat value of the Bitcoin go down, it still feels great, to your point, Alan, when you wake up the next day and you have more than you did yesterday. So, you know, if you do believe that in the future Bitcoin will be the standard, this is a bargain price, you should be buying it.
Well, and like Cody mentioned a couple times too, he was just like, if you don't have a whole coin already, like you should make it your sole goal to get a whole coin, because when the world's on that Bitcoin standard, there's only 21 million. And he always makes the point too, that there's 44 million millionaires in the world, that not even all of them could own an entire Bitcoin. So like when the mania happens, it goes to the whole thing gradually, then suddenly, like it's going to happen so fast. And some people are like, oh, that's messed up. Like all you early people throwing in money, like are going to be super wealthy. And it's like, well, no, it's not messed up, because that was the price of risk in throwing in. Being an early adopter essentially is like, there could be some scenario that we haven't foreseen where Bitcoin goes to zero, you know, like there's still some speculation in there.
That's personally how investing works. You get in early before everybody else so you can make more money. Like, how the fuck is that
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, and that's just this pure, that's the price of risk, you know. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't well, if we're on a Bitcoin standard and you didn't believe in it then, like, I'm sorry, like that's like just how like the cookie crumbles, you know, but you still have the added benefit of now you're in, and people say this all the time, you buy Bitcoin at the price you deserve. I 100% believe that. And even still, like even the people that are last to get in, at least they can work and their time won't be devalued, you know. At least when they get paid, they can put the money to the side and know that, hey, I don't need to go through some BS like investment vehicle or something to outpace the rate of inflation currently, you know. And that's coming from a first world perspective. Imagine people in developing economies, you know, that don't have that luxury or don't have access to central banking. You know, I mean, we're seeing this in El Salvador. We're seeing that what Jack Mallers is doing, bringing banking to the unbanked. Like there's so much untapped monetary potential that the locals can reap from. And we see this statistically, you know, like the more access to banking, the more access to financial services, the less crime and less murder, less robberies and everything happens in these communities, you know. And we see, when you look at like El Salvador crime rates, you're like, oh, robberies are really high. And you look at their banking, they're unbanked, 70% of the population's unbanked. You're like, okay, this starts to make a little bit more sense. So I'm starting to ramble. I don't really know where I was going with that, but I'll let somebody else speak.
100% on the, you know, you get to keep your wealth, you get to be paid, and the pay stays there rather than bleeding out. You know, even doctors have to balance their portfolios because otherwise their money's going away. That's massive. And talking about like the remittance stuff, a great stat I read last week, but you know, even here, so ACHs from banks, just wiring inside the system, 55 trillion a year. They estimate up to 5% of that is fraudulent. You know, that's just ridiculous.
That's a lot. 5%'s a big statistic. I've never thought about fraud being used in a remittance sense. So what are they defining as fraud?
That's bank ACHs. So, you know, whenever you're wiring money, a lot of that isn't remittances, quite honestly, but 55 trillion, 5% of that is ridiculously unacceptable slippage, you know, and Bitcoin fixes that.
100%. 100. You know, something else interesting I came across the other day. This is more like US related, but some of these government programs, these black programs that have black budgets, where they're not included in like reports to the public, and they have unlimited funding, you know, and it's just like, are they just able to print money out of thin air? Is this how these budgets are being funded? You know, it's like there's so much, like, if the government or the Fed wanted to just print money and not let anybody know, you know, there's nothing stopping them. Because if somebody's presented with a stack of $100 bills, they're presented with a stack of $100. If they're authentic and real and like they're not counterfeit, you know, printing money is just legal counterfeiting. I don't remember who said that. I think it might have been Kenny that said that line a couple times. But yeah, if somebody came up to you with just a stack of money, like, and why would the government not do that? You know, that's a way for them to get whatever they want. It's how wars are funded. I mean, you need inflation to make war happen. I'm rambling again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. Bitcoin Standard hammers on that. The book. They have carte blanche. Every government, I think, pretty much in history has abused it because it's overwhelming. It's compelling.
Well, I think part of the argument of the Bitcoin Standard is that often sort of, you know, playing with your own money and the value of your own money leads to a lot of wars. So not only do you need inflation to fight the wars, you're probably inflating which caused the war. So it's kind of a, you know, same two sides of the same story there.
We just interviewed our guy Stockpile, Mark, and he was talking about the Bitcoin Standard, and then it kind of led into I don't know if you guys saw the tweet, but it was said that the Bitcoin Standard will be the new rich dad, poor dad for millennials, or, you know, and and one of his most inspirational books was Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I also thought was really good. But I thought that was a funny take. I thought, you know, so.
All right, so let's talk about alts, because I
love that book.
Go ahead, Mark. Sorry, go ahead. I want to hear your takes.
No, I was just gonna. No, I agree. I love that book. Bill or Dusty, have either of you guys read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
It's funny. It's actually on my like the next book on my list. I've never read it, but my friend that got me into Bitcoin was like, "You have to read this." So
it's great, but it leaves you hanging a little bit. So you got to pick up and, you know, continue on with the Bitcoin. It kind of sets some of the, yeah, that's not right. Where do I go from here? So it's good.
I think what's kind of interesting about the book is, you know, whatever your political views are, but this guy, it just gives you really good foundational knowledge, and then you can kind of see that he's very he's really buddies with Trump, right? And they created a whole series in the 90s of financial news and everything, and it's just kind of interesting to see somebody from that side of everything, and then now how pro Bitcoin he is. Like, if you subscribe to his newsletter, which I do, it's always buying Bitcoin. It's all about Bitcoin, it's just pretty awesome to see. Just I don't know, it's nice. It makes me feel good that I'm on thinking the right way as this guy who wrote some incredible book about 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think
a pullback that he's expecting in Bitcoin.
What's that?
Didn't he just tweet out about an expected pullback in Bitcoin price? I thought I saw that he did.
he's hoping for 24K to buy at 24K because there's a an unfilled gap in at 24K on the CME.
You're right.
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, Peter Brandt has, who's a real famous technical trader too, has put out the 24. He was the one who actually put the unfilled gap out there, but I don't think that's going to happen. Kiyosaki owns a lot of Bitcoin already, but he's just trying to add to his position.
I don't think Brandt.
I think from that book, yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I think what's interesting, just like what changed my framework, my mindset about Rich Dad Poor Dad is just, the book really kind of goes through how to think differently to really build wealth, because he talks about his poor dad and his rich dad. He has a stepfather and he has his biological father, and they both just on very different paths, right? One of them's kind of just like in the system, working, trading time for money and so forth, and the other one really just explains how to build wealth and then how to maximize time, to do that. So it's really cool. But I know we're about to jump into alts. Alan, he's scratching at it. He's ready to roll. But Jacob, I think you made a comment that you'd love to just like invest in a basket of top currencies or Bitcoin and other top alt currencies, and you can actually do that with the Grayscale. There's a Grayscale digital large cap on the trading on the I believe it's probably trading on the OTC, but it's public equity. So it's GDLC is the ticker if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah, that's something like for like a Roth IRA or like a retirement fund. How do you get kind of connected to Bitcoin? And I think about buying like with like my Roth IRA, for instance, because I still find that's extremely important to at least add the $6,000 value to that per year, just to kind of hedge yourself against whatever. I don't know, whatever. But I kind of like tying myself to the miners like Mara, Riot, something like that would be very interesting. But it doesn't sound like it, but I am along the lines of what Cody Lowe in our school said, or Palms courses. If you don't have a Bitcoin, which I don't, that should be your primary goal. So that's my goal at the moment. And then I guess I'll reevaluate what I'm doing. Probably just after I get one, I'll be like, I need two, need three.
Yeah, the other thing they always say is that like alts are designed to steal your Bitcoin. Anything that isn't Bitcoin is trying to steal money from you that would otherwise go into Bitcoin, because someone's always buying up the higher bag. But you brought up a good point where, and I hear a lot of people in the alt space always say like, well, I see a use case, and I know a lot of people are quick to like, no, it's all a Ponzi, it's all a scam. And I'm like, okay, let's step back and let's take a look at because some of these organizations they're really building something, but they surround themselves in the veil of Bitcoin by saying stuff like decentralized autonomous organization. Like that's false. That's just a fancy word for digital corporation. Like if there's a CEO, if there's a face to the coin, it's not decentralized. Like Ethereum, for example, like I can't run a node on it. Like I could mine it for right now, but if they switch to proof of stake, like now I have no way of contributing to the network or networking power aside from staking my token. That just doesn't bode well with me. But I think going forward in the future, I think there might be maybe some of these tokens will rebrand, come out, shed a little bit more truth, and be like, hey, yeah, we're not super decentralized, but we're trying to build a more decentralized more like not fully decentralized, but not as inherently centralized as let's say like some of these corporations like Apple or Microsoft, and I think these traditional corporations too, if we head closer to a Bitcoin standard, things like the stock market, like the US stock market and global stock markets are going to suffer tremendously, especially since they're all priced in dollars. Like if we see because this is where the Ponzi gets insanely weird, is like we have this inflationary money and yet you're throwing it in the stock market that's also priced in this inflationary money, and somehow it's outpacing the inflation of dollars. And like you look at charts like right now, you look at like the S&P 500, like total performance, it's got a nice like 45-degree line going all the way up. But then when you look at it priced in gold, it's the inverse. It's going down like that. So it sheds a little bit of light there. But also, like, in order to have like any kind of voting say or power in like these corporations, like you need to be like a majority shareholder to sit on the board and make any changes. And my point being is like, as like a regular investor, and let's not, then that doesn't even go into like the barrier of entry into just being able to enter the stock market, and how, I guess, with the hot buzzwords like equality and equity, I don't want to get too much into that because I know those are hot buzzwords. But things like Robinhood kind of tore that down a little bit. But the nice thing about Bitcoin is there is no barrier. Like anybody can come in and buy. Same with most of these altcoins. But when we see this shift into like a Bitcoin economy, like I said, the stock market's going to suffer. All these markets are going to suffer, and these corporations are going to pretty much be in panic mode. Like, well, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to retain our like corporation status? And I don't think it's that far fetched to see your Apple, your Microsoft, your Amazon, your Netflix, like, especially since these companies all deal already in tech, create their own token rather than be listed on the stock market. And with this token, now you can implement, and they're going to do it differently. They're going to see what works out best. But rather than buying a share and being limited to when the market opens versus when the market closes, like newer generations, they like this 24-hour cycle. They want to be able to buy in whatever. They're already accustomed to the gamification of things. You know, they're psychologically trained that way to be inclined towards buying something more like that. But also with creating a token for these corporations, there is some utility you can throw in there. Now you can have some more democratic voting rights. You can choose. Now, some of these corporations probably don't want to do that. You know, they don't want the masses dictating what they can and can't do. But there's some out there that are like, hey, we want to do what you guys want to do. And I mean, those are going to be the companies that went out ultimately, because that's just how competition and democracy works. You know, the place with the least amount of red tape, the place with the least amount of barriers is going to see the greatest influx of like knowledge and money and all that, because that's where it can flourish. I'm just curious what you guys think. That's been my thought process through this for like the last couple of weeks.
It's great, and you get very philosophical, and I think that we're going to see a little bit of all. Some are going to adopt Bitcoin, some are going to try and make their own tokens. I think Definity Internet Computer is a huge Trojan horse coming out of Silicon Valley. They literally
100%
further into their control. Question for you and for all you guys, but as people start to appreciate, you know, the uniqueness of proof of work, could you see like some of these other coins, some of these utility coins kind of rebranding, pulling back into the fold and working with Bitcoin?
So, like, yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because right now the hot things, Ethereum and proof of stake and all these other alts are piggybacking off of, I guess, the FUD that was created around proof of work. And Bitcoiners have done a great job at pushing back all the FUD. I mean, that's it. Bitcoiners have been through so much crap that they don't take it. And they're way more, most of these guys that I talk to are way more well-versed in altcoinery than the altcoiners themselves. Like, they understand these projects way better, which I just always find super fascinating.
But sorry
yeah,
to interrupt. I saw you like a tweet this morning, Bill, about the girl saying to the two guys, are you guys friends? And then the altcoin's like, yeah, definitely. And the other guy's like, fuck no.
Yeah, the Bitcoiners like standing back. Fuck this.
Jacob, you should share that tweet here. Actually, let me make sure.
Yeah, hold up. I'll pull it up.
Yeah,
right here.
for sure.
Twitter. Yeah.
I need to make sure you can share.
And sorry, not to take you guys off topic.
Yeah, no. Anyway,
threw the meme in Slack too, in our private Slack.
Oh, how good. Oh yeah, you put it in the memes thing, didn't you? Yeah.
but anyways, to answer Bill's question. So yeah, I don't all like I said, most of 99.999% of these coins are designed to steal your Bitcoin. And once I think the pendulum shifts back towards Bitcoin, especially with the release of Taproot, and now like in November, we'll be able to successfully deploy smart contracts on the Bitcoin network. I mean, we're already seeing this with stuff like Stacks and Sovereign. I was originally under the guise that Sovereign didn't have a utility token. They tweeted out last week that they went up on Uniswap, and now I'm like, nope, I don't believe in this project anymore. I don't think any layer 2 should have a token. I like, because Lightning, there's no Lightning token. You know,
that's a tough one though for swaps though. Like I don't know, honestly, don't have an answer. I'm messing around with Thorchain. I love like how open the developer community, like I'd suggest stuff and they do it, you know. Like I don't get this, could you put a little message here? It's there. They do use a separate token for sort of the liquidity and the swaps. It would be cool to see if you could actually do all of that on Bitcoin. I'm not sure how many layers and how complex they could get, and Taproot definitely helps with the programmatic ability. But I could see it down the road, people pulling back and, you know, dev communities saying, okay, we were working on Cardano, but Bitcoin's good enough now and it's got the better integrity. We're coming to you.
Yeah, no, you're definitely going to see that. And I think the most important, this is where a lot of, I think, so you'll hear like a lot of disagreements amongst Bitcoiners, how they feel about like the tokenomics of layer 2 and layer 3s. But the universal consensus is that the base layer is decentralized. And that's what matters the most, because that at the very core of it, there is no manipulation that can occur. Unlike, you know, Ethereum, like, I mean, it's got a dev team. They're shifting from proof of work to proof of stake. And then they have the release of, I'm totally going to butcher this, but I think it's EIP 1559.
Yeah, it's coming out in like next month, supposedly. I mean, that's what they say. But
yeah, and the developers have been open. Like, we don't know if this is going to make this inflationary or deflationary.
It's supposed to make it inflationary, and then they're going to do the ETH2 in like October. That's going to burn it. That creates the equation where it's like deflationary, but then who knows? Maybe
see, I don't like. There's no way you can twist that. Or well, me, that's why, I'm okay with that. Like, it's.
Well, see, some people. Okay, so just to play devil's advocate, I know this sounds so. This is going to be the worst thing to say, but like, when I don't know. Okay, so we have this choice of owning one asset that is truly just by itself and like, you know, decentralized. Yes, that's the one asset, but like, okay, now we have 1,000 others that aren't. So that doesn't make the other ones bad or anything. Like, you can get behind. Maybe you're a fan of one of these guys. You don't have to be so like, this guy's gonna fuck me. It's like, this guy could do well. I'm not saying Vitalik or Ben or whoever you like. I know it sounds, but it's like, come on, man. Like,
here's why I don't. Okay, a lot of the people working for these places mean good. You know, there's a lot of incredible talent, but when Vitalik comes out and tells me that proof of stake on Lex Friedman's podcast, and is lying through his teeth about the benefits of proof of stake, that he very full well he is aware. There's no excuse for that guy being misinformed and misunderstood on how proof of work is better for the environment. And he's telling Lex's millions of listeners who probably aren't all that well versed in cryptocurrency that proof of stake is much better for decentralization. I'm like, this guy's a scammer. That's a scammy thing to say.
That's a scammer thing to say. I agree with that.
That's a scammer thing to say. And like, I don't like it, you know, like, and maybe there'll be some good stuff that comes out from Ethereum. I mean, we're kind of seeing it. But like, ultimately, like you said, like, some of these aren't as good as Bitcoin. So why would I put any of my dollars into something that is not as good? It doesn't make any sense.
I think. Oh, sorry, Bill.
Sorry. Okay. The problem is they offer utility that Bitcoin doesn't currently offer. They beat it to the punch on some of the use cases, some of the pillars of finance. I get that. That's great. And, you know, proof of stake and even centralization are things we've been dealing with forever. That's the way it's always been. Bitcoin is pure and unique at the baseline, but there's going to be some adaptation. You know, When it comes down to it, proof of stake propagates, existing wealth division. Proof of work does not. And, crossing that gap is probably going to happen all kinds of piecemeal with a million fights along the way.
For sure.
But when we get to the future of like what's the Facebook's trying to make a token now, and then there's going to be, like the Action Bronson token or no, right. My point is I think I'm not even thinking about the coins that currently exist. I think when we get into the tokenization aspects of like companies or whatever, and then that's going into CBDCs or whatever the hell those are, I guess. But it's just, I don't know. I think there's going to be use for these applications. I don't think that they're going to be just worthless. And I think it's kind of ridiculous. And I wrote this in that first homework assignment was, okay, I like trading basketball cards, right? I'm a moron if I'm thinking about storing my wealth in gold or basketball cards. I get that. But why are we comparing the two? And that's what we continually do with Bitcoin and all this other shit. Can we keep basketball cards and Pokemon cards on the same playing thing? I get, like, that's my thing is like, I wish we kind of had the perspective of all of these are shit coins. So what can we do with these shit coins? Are they going to have some
you're saying
value?
it, not me. Okay.
No, but it's true.
If it can be built on Bitcoin,
well, yeah.
Then why would I invest in anything else?
I'll give you a little rabbit hole on that, Alan.
Okay, I want to hear it.
Are you guys familiar with Paxos?
I know of it. I'm not familiar with it.
So this guy Chad Cascaria, he's super rabid coiner, and not Bitcoin so much, but crypto. They've got a couple coins. One is kind of boring. It's called PaxG, but what that does is it's backed up, audited like 3 or 4 times a year. Each coin's worth 1 ounce of gold. So it's a digital product of gold that you can own, you can redeem it. So it's not like any of these JP Morgan, ETFs where you don't know if it actually exists. Honestly, and very price manipulated. They've paid huge fines, so you can get your coin back for like $30, but you can also lend it. So you can, lease your coin and get like 4% interest on it on major exchanges. That's the boring one. The other one is their dollar stable coin. Just another stable coin. But what they're doing is by taking the properties of the dollar and that peg, and again, super audited, they're going for every regulation. They're calling down every regulation on themselves, like Anchorage and Caitlin and Silvergate. So they've got these dollars, and what they're doing is they're basically setting up exchange for same-day settlement of stocks. And they're working with major brokers, completely bypassing all that DTCC stuff that you heard about with Wall Street Bets. This will save probably conservatively tens of billions of dollars a year, and it's backward compatible for the big brokerages. There's no way they're not using it. This is going to happen, and I can't believe how under the radar it is. I mean, they've raised 500 million, but most people are like, yeah, sure, they're one of the coins on CoinMarketCap. So this is something where I'm a big fan, even though it's not as pure as Bitcoin yet.
Is it running on? I'm assuming it's running on Ethereum.
That's a damn good question. I don't know.
Okay,
because I go deeper on the other parts.
So let's talk about Paxos in a good light. Then let's just say, like, hey, Ethereum's all they have right now. What they're doing for their market is fantastic. It's without cutting corners in a bad way. They're mitigating a lot of external useless costs, which is great. The reason why I won't buy into it yet is because it's built on Ethereum, So yeah, this is where this goes back to like what I was saying earlier about like, there are a lot of tokens out there that probably have great and good utility. Paxos sounds like one of them. But until it can be deployed on Bitcoin Core, I don't think I'm going to dabble in it yet. Paxos is something now that you're sparking my interest. I want to read up on it. And I'm sure there's some way that they can migrate everything from Ethereum to Bitcoin. Someone's going to figure it out. And if you have a bag, Bill, I'm sure you're going to be rewarded greatly for it. But someone like me, who I have some money to play with, I don't have a lot of money to play with. My rationale and thinking right now is like, what's the least risky for me currently today? And for me, it's Bitcoin. And that's like where I want to keep right now. All I'm worried about is having a fund for store of wealth, not so much looking towards like the utility side of some of these other tokens. So I think you bring up a great point and a great argument there, though. Definitely. I should probably make some of those stuff a little bit more clear in the future.
Just to clarify, I just looked up, it is an ERC20. And no, I don't have a bag. It's really, they're maintaining a baseline. It's a stable coin. So it's in that way a little bit purer. They're not trying to just do a pump and dump. The company is providing genuine utility. And quite frankly, if you get to follow this guy, watch a few videos with this Chad Cascarilla, he's encouraging. I think, just taking a stab in the dark, but he's the sort of person I would think would have no problem switching rails to pure Bitcoin if it was feasible.
I think, yeah, and I think that's the problem with a lot of these projects is they want to build on Bitcoin. The infrastructure is not there yet, and that's not a bad thing. Bitcoin, while it's not the fastest to develop, let's remember what are we not sacrificing with speed or leaving out speed, and that's decentralization. It just takes time. I mean, Taproot was in the works. I think it originally originated around 2012, 2013. Like these Bitcoin developers were talking about it, and it's finally in the last year and a half they started making strides towards making it happen, and now it's finally everyone's 90+% of the miners have signaled for it, which means it's good to go. It's locked in, and November we'll see it deployed. And I think the next 2 years, we're going to see a lot of these projects leave Ethereum, which will be great. Dustin, Mark, I'm curious. I know Bill and I have been talking quite a bit, but I want to hear your guys' takes on everything as well.
I don't know. I mean, so I've played around with Sovereign a little bit and tried to get into kind of what's going on with sort of this stuff built on top of Bitcoin, and it seems like it's still pretty early. Like I was able to get some stuff on there and do some yield farming and stuff like that, but I also made a giant mistake and lost some money trying to send some money back to myself. So like I feel like there's still some technical issues to work out for the people like me that are not that smart. And I also, there's some cool things happening. Like I think Bill bringing up Paxos is cool because Paxos got at least in the short term a federal charter. We'll see if they're able to keep it with the new OCC head, but I think it's kind of cool to see people trying to do things that are kind of in line with what's happening in the regulatory environment. And I think over time we'll kind of see what shakes out. I think it's a little bit difficult to assume that some of these companies will start to create tokens and trade them 24/7 on decentralized blockchains, because frankly they can't under the current securities laws. And so until that stuff is addressed, I think we're going to have to see things kind of play a little bit slowly and develop in that direction. But I still I spend most of my time studying Bitcoin and spending all my money's largely in Bitcoin, so I'm not as well informed as I should be on a lot of the other altcoins, so I tend to stay away if I don't understand it completely.
A wise investment decision. If you don't understand it, stay away from it.
Yeah.
I should clarify. I'm aware of the securities regulation there. Maybe I'm too much wishful thinking here, but like in this Bitcoin standard future, money in the state are going to be completely separated, and a lot of these regulational authorities are going to be dissolved or defunct, and countries and spots of the world that aren't regulated like that are going to see a massive influx of wealth and knowledge and people who just want to innovate. I mean, like I've been saying, like innovation favors the least amount of barrier to entry, the least amount of red tape.
Yeah,
I 100% agree with that. I think it's just, we have to kind of look at where we are, and at least while I still have to use fiat to go buy groceries, I'm gonna play nice in the system.
For sure. For sure. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have just thoughts. I have nightmares. I have nightmares from 2017 still. So, that's not to say that, I'm on record for saying, look, I think there's going to be some interesting things built over the years. I am in the camp that I believe a lot of it's going to be built on the Bitcoin network. But I'm kind of like what Dusty said. I don't know where to go to get credible information and I don't have the reliable resources in the alt network and community that I've built trust with over the years. I'm not informed enough. And I've learned over the past, not just in alts, but other investments I made, that's how you can get burned. I mean, you want to do your own due diligence and go with, at the end of the day, you're responsible for your decision. But I feel like there's enough individuals that I've came in contact with, throughout from 2017 to now, in the Bitcoin community, and there's still a lot to learn about Bitcoin. But I have conviction in the Bitcoin network, and I don't have that in any of the altcoin networks. So right now, I just stay away from it. I know that some people will make money. Some people might, build some good things with utility, and that's great. It's a free market, and that's what that's what capitalism is about. So if they are able to provide value and build something with utility, then there'll be a use case for it. But it's just not a place that I spend enough time in or I'm comfortable, putting any of my money into.
Yeah, I think I want to just jump in there because I think what Mark just said is a great point. I hope that one of these things all these things are tremendously successful. I hope that there's a lot of great innovation that comes from them. Because, to your point earlier, Alan, I think that's where we sort of see a shift to, something closer to a Bitcoin standard by having better tools out there. So I hope they do well. And I, agree that some people will probably make a lot of money if they invest in it early. But I'm, going to stand by until I understand a little bit better.
Yeah, I definitely don't want anybody losing any money. As much as I like to talk down on like alts and all that, ultimately I'm like, I don't want, because not everyone right now, and I think this is a signal of a declining economy, is the inherent desire to gamble and gamify and just make uninformed bad decisions because you see somebody making an X amount of money on return.
It's desperation. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And so yeah, there's some tokens that are great, but what's been in the limelight for the last 3-4 months: Dogecoin, SafeMoon, Cum Rocket, like ass, it's funny until you're like, yeah, some people are getting burnt hard.
Some people like Mark Cuban is accepting Doge as a source of payment, and I know that it's like a meme and it's a joke, but I don't know, don't you think that there's something to be said about the network adoption of it all and the popularization of people know what Doge is, and even though it has no use case and it's unlimited supply and everything, but I don't know, I just think that's the use application is you can use it to buy a Mavericks ticket. I know it sounds silly, but it gives you an opportunity for your dollar to scale in some sense. And again, I'm not into these coins. I'm just playing devil's advocate that I wouldn't buy it either, but I could see Doge, taking on a life of its own someday in a sense, because it is a joke and people think jokes are funny.
Yeah, well, definitely. But
go
ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I'll just add to that real quickly, Jacob. And what you're saying is kind of playing out, so to speak, to date. It's jumped into if it's being accepted at the Mavs and there's all this exchange, it's kind of jumped right into the medium of exchange stage. And to me, that's concerning because, if you go back and just look at the history of money and how it develops, Doge has bypassed completely the store of value stage, which in history, historically speaking, you have to establish the store of value before you get to the medium of exchange. And we see kind of Bitcoin's historical, growth to kind of becoming a store of value. And some say that we're still not there yet because of this intraday volatility that we have. But if you look over the course of an annual basis, right, or a 12-month time frame or even longer, then it's been the best performing store of value that we have. I mean, there's actually if you look at gold, right, we talk a lot about being, you know, the store of value, you know, historically, right? It's the soundest store of value to date. And I think what's interesting, if you go back and you look at like the historical returns of gold, is that it had a period from like 2011 to 2014 and 15 where its yearly close established new lows each year for I think 3 or 4 years. I'm trying to pull it up right now. But my point being is that it still was never a store of value, right? Gold still to date remains a store of value, and that's my concern about some of these other alts and cryptocurrencies that are moving too quick. Is that yes, Doge is trying to play money right now with you know, some people accepting it and believing in it and getting in it, but it's bypassing the, you know, historical history that we have of how sound money is created and established.
Yeah, that's a neat point. So, you know, it's being used as like a fiat, but it's even inferior to fiat.
Shit, I'm muted and I'm talking. 100%. Yeah, I don't. There's a couple points I want to address, so we'll step back here. So Jacob brought up like the Mavs accept Dogecoin as like form of payment, and stuff like that I think just propagates the problem even worse. Like I was in a Twitter Spaces room trying to talk to some of these altcoiners, and I love entering these rooms because there's some Bitcoiners that'll come in and just like yell, and like I'll come in and like nicely like start asking questions, and I'm like, oh, like, why do you guys like Dogecoin? Oh, you think it does? That's great. Like, did you know Bitcoin does this? You know, trying to get them to start the thinking process through it. But I had a guy start arguing with me that because Dogecoin had programmable inflation in there and that they knew the set rate of inflation, that it was better than the dollars. And I was like, okay, you're not wrong. But what if I told you there's a token out there that has programmable deflation into it? Wouldn't that make it better than Doge? And he was like, no, because it's too expensive. And I was just like, no. You know, it's like unit. This was getting right into like my ideas on how unit bias is so real for so many people that just don't understand how these things are valued. And I was just like, look, like, yeah, you can use anything as a method of transaction. Like that makes it money by definition, but that doesn't make it sound money. That doesn't make it a store of value. And so, yeah, Doge, I guess, is great for some people who that's brought them into the space. And then they find Bitcoin and they realize, oh, Doge is terrible. But most people don't think that way. And I don't like saying that, but that's just a matter of fact, especially like, I mean, we already know 45 to 50% of the American populace doesn't have their money stored anywhere. And like an even greater percentage doesn't even have $2,000 or enough money to cover some kind of emergency expense. So to say that Doge is great for introducing, this goes into the whole short-term thinking thing where like, yeah, okay, short-term, there's going to be some people that come into the space and find Bitcoin. Okay. But they're also long-term, a lot of these people are going to get burnt and hurt, and we're going to see wealth that they otherwise would have retained taken out. And so, because like before that, you didn't need Dogecoin to find Bitcoin. It wasn't necessary. And if Dogecoin's gone, Bitcoin's still going to be around and people are going to still find Bitcoin. So short term, maybe it's accelerating a little bit, but long term, like it's going to be a no factor, and it's going to hurt a lot of people short term. So,
and just to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, and it's kind of funny because it is again related to Mark Cuban, is that Titan coin. I don't know if you guys heard about that story this weekend.
Oh yeah.
To be honest, I don't even know what it is. I just know it was at 60 and he was in it and it crashed to 0. So I guess that kind of goes to your point. It's like, it's just not a safe place to store your wealth. And the more you propagate that message, it's going to hurt a lot of people. It's a fine to trade it, I guess, if you know exactly what you're doing, which I don't. And I don't own, any of the stuff, but just kind of what's going on with that Titan coin? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, people say that about Bitcoin all the time. Look, its historical track record is only 12 years, and that's not, nearly enough time has gone by, and now we have these these altcoins being created, you know, and they're out on the market for a couple months or a year or two. And that's, you know, to Alan, it's just even 10 times more risky than, you know, something that has a historical track record of 12 years and has the, you know, the ROI and the compound annual growth rate that something like Bitcoin had. So yeah, so I pulled up this gold chart, just going back to this for a second, because it's interesting. I just came across it a couple weeks ago, and it kind of puts some things into perspective with the volatility of Bitcoin, because you hear it all the time. And once again, Bitcoin's volatility is intraday, it's short-term volatility, but annually it's a very successful track record. But going back to gold, 2012, gold closed at a price, its yearly close was at $1,664. In 2013, its annual $1,200, so it dropped about 27%. The following year, it had a flat close. It closed at $11.99. Then in 2015, closed at $10.60, down again. So you had 3 consecutive years where your annualized return actually dropped in gold, and it, you know, still to this date though is remains as a store value, even with the ongoing inflation, right? Throughout those years, that it dropped in value with more money being printed, because, you know, the printing really kicked into gear after this, you know, the 2009 financial crisis, and it's just, you know, gone up and to the right, the M2 money supply since then. So you know, I still think volatility is not a bad thing, right? You know, you want to be in a volatile asset. Bitcoin's still in the part of the adoption cycle, where we're going to have a lot of volatility. But when that volatility comes to the upside, as we've seen it right up to 20,000 in 2017, and then up to 64 already this year. I mean, this next leg, is, you know, going back to Shawn's point earlier, just how it's kind of, you know, reconsolidating right now. This next spring up could be, you know, could, as Pump would say, face melting.
Another point on your gold.
Let's go! Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's Bitcoin standard again. But, you know, gold has an inflation rate of supply of something like 9% a year. You know, we pull more out of the ground, and, you know, when the price goes up high, that goes up like 15%. People, you know, scrap it from everywhere. It's a very imperfect medium, let alone that you can't move it around, it gets stolen, all the rest of that. You can't slice it and dice it. So there is a real use case here for something that does this well. You know, store of value, having a good tape measure is immensely valuable to the world.
100%, guys. So, all right, we're approaching on the 11 o'clock hour. I think, Bill, I think you wrapped it up very nicely there. I appreciate you guys coming on. I think we're going to start doing this weekly. I think it's great to keep the conversation going. And also, as we get more people into this, I think it'll be great to kind of, you know, shed some light. Cause I've seen as people come into these classes, like there's just a ton of like, not like, they're just not well informed on stuff, and there's nothing, like, we've all been there. And I think part of the Pomp class is too focused on trying to, I guess, like, ease some people in between the difference between some of these alts and some of like Bitcoin, and they don't want to create like an environment where it's like, hey, like, gonna kind of call you out a little bit on Ethereum, which is fine. I think that's totally appropriate. But I'd like, the goal of all this is just to create a space for people to come in, get a Bitcoiner's perspective, and just ask some questions, and kind of educate and be constructive and mitigate, I guess, some of the toxicity that you would find out in Twitter and stuff. I think this is a great avenue to do that. If you guys want to plug your Twitter handles or stuff, I'm sure there's, like, whoever listens to this, they might want to follow you guys because you all had some great points. So I'll let you guys do that.
I'm Bill Skid, BILLSKIDD.
Mark, do you want to plug your Twitter?
I'll put it as my screen name for next week's, but it's at stockpile_GA on Twitter. And just want to say thanks Alan for the invite, and you know, Jacob and Shawn and Mitchell, you guys are doing a great work on your Citizens of Blockchain podcast. Bill, it was nice to meet you. I know Dusty dropped off And yeah, this is awesome. I hope to make it every week, and it's great just to share best practices, right? I mean, we don't want to maybe give financial advice, but I'm sure we're going to come across some great ideas amongst ourselves that we can, all explore and look into. And I learned something from each and every one of you this morning. So appreciate the time and hope everybody has a great weekend too.
Appreciate it, Mark.
And thank you guys. Good to catch up with you again.
Yeah, definitely. And I will add at the beginning too, just so no one's worried, I always do add a disclaimer. None of this stuff is financial advice. So this can't come back and bite any of us. But all right.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining, and Alan for hosting. And, I look forward to seeing you guys next week for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Take it easy, guys.
Yeah, thanks for hopping on, guys.